I stood on my own porch with my key in my hand, but the lock wouldn't turn. 3 days ago, paramedics had carried me out of this house on a stretcher, my heart failing. Now I couldn't get back in. My daughter-in-law Amber opened the door with a bright smile. "We changed the locks for security while you were gone," she said. I looked past her into the entryway. My wedding photo was gone. My husband's handmade coat rack was gone. "Can I come in?" I asked. "Of course, this is your home," she said. But when I walked to my bedroom, I found it painted gray and converted into an office. My bed, my dresser, my late husband's photo, all gone. Thrown into garbage bags in the basement like trash. Drop your name and where you're watching from in the comments. I randomly choose from subscribers to feature your name as a character in my stories. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments after you finish watching. The locks had been changed. I stood on my own porch, key in hand, staring at the door that wouldn't open. 3 days ago, I'd been carried out of this house on a stretcher, heart failing, paramedics shouting instructions I couldn't quite hear. Now I couldn't get back in. I tried the key again, twisting it harder this time. Nothing. The deadbolt didn't budge. "Oh, Lucille." Amber appeared in the doorway, all smiles, her phone already in her hand. She was probably checking her Instagram notifications. "We changed the locks for security," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. While you were gone. I'll get you a key later." Later. Like it was my house to wait for permission to enter. I looked past her into the entryway. The wedding photo of David and me that had hung there for 35 years, gone. The coat rack he'd built by hand from reclaimed wood, gone. The small table where we'd always left our keys, replaced with something modern and white. "Can I come in?" I asked, my voice steady despite the wrongness crawling up my spine. "Of course." Amber stepped aside, still smiling. "This is your home." But her eyes said something different. Something felt wrong. My chest tightened, and this time it wasn't my heart. It was instinct. 40 years as a registered nurse teaches you to recognize when something's deteriorating. But let me start from the beginning, 3 years ago, when my husband died. I was 69 when I lost David to cancer. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed too late. 6 months from diagnosis to death. 6 months of watching the strongest man I'd ever known waste away. The kind of loss that makes a 3-bedroom craftsman house feel like a cathedral of silence. Every room echoed with his absence. The kitchen where he'd made coffee every morning at 6, humming old folk songs off-key. The porch where we'd sat together watching the sunset, his hand always finding mine. The garden where he'd planted roses, one for each year of our marriage, 35 bushes, all red except the white one for our wedding day. The first month after David died, I couldn't sleep in our bedroom. The silence was too loud. I'd sleep on the couch, the TV on, just to hear voices. Any voices. I'd set the table for 2 out of habit, then remember halfway through. I'd buy his favorite coffee at the store, French roast, whole bean, then realize he'd never drink it. My son Derek called a month after the funeral. I was sitting in the garden, staring at the roses that needed deadheading. David always did that. "Mom, I need to ask you something," Derek said, his voice careful in that way that meant he'd rehearsed this. I could hear Amber coaching him in the background. "Amber and I are struggling with rent. Harper's daycare is expensive, and we're trying to save for a down payment. Could we move in with you? Just temporarily, until we get on our feet." Temporarily. I said yes because the house was too quiet and I wanted to know my granddaughter. Harper was 3 then, all curls and laughter and sticky hands. I thought having them close would ease the loneliness. I thought I was gaining a family. Amber hugged me at the door that first day when they arrived with their U-Haul truck. Her arms were tight around my shoulders, her perfume overwhelming. "You're not losing a son," she whispered in my ear. "You're gaining a daughter." I believed her. I remembered David's funeral, how Amber had held my hand through the entire service. She'd sat beside me in the front pew, her hand squeezing mine when the pastor talked about David's kindness. "We're here for you," she'd said afterward, her eyes wet with tears. "Always. You're not alone." That word, always, felt true then. It felt like a promise. The first year was peaceful enough. We established routines, boundaries that felt natural. I had my space, and they had theirs. Every morning at 6, I'd go to the garden and water the roses David planted. I'd talk to him sometimes, telling him about Harper, about the weather, about nothing and everything. Amber would come down with Harper around 8, always with her phone in hand. She had 85,000 followers on Instagram who watched her curate a perfect life. Perfect breakfasts arranged just so on my grandmother's china. Perfect outfits for Harper, tagged with boutique names. Perfect motherhood in my living room, my kitchen, my home. She never asked to use my things for her photos. She just did. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be difficult. I didn't want to be the stereotypical, difficult mother-in-law everyone complains about. So I kept quiet when I should have spoken up. But lately, something had shifted in the way she looked at me. Like I was furniture that no longer matched her aesthetic. Like I was in the way of something she wanted. "This house is really too big for one person," she said one morning over coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table paying bills. The property tax bill was in front of me. $4, $200 a year, same as it had been for a decade. Every year, I wrote that check from my nursing pension. "I like the space," I replied, not looking up. David and I chose every detail together. Amber sipped her coffee, her eyes wandering around my kitchen. My kitchen, where David and I had replaced the cabinets ourselves, where we'd picked out every tile. "I know, but wouldn't you be happier somewhere more age appropriate?" she said. Age appropriate. Like I was a child who needed to be told where I belonged. A nice senior community, maybe. They have activities, other people your age. You wouldn't be so isolated. "I'm 72, not 92. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own home," I said, my voice firm. Amber smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're so old-fashioned, Lucille," she said, laughing a little. "I'm just trying to help. You're not getting any younger." She said it like my age was a disease. Like being 72 meant I was incompetent. I saw something flicker in her expression as she looked around the room again. Calculation, measuring, planning. 2 weeks later, I had a heart attack while weeding the garden. It was a Tuesday morning, the roses in full bloom, their scent thick in the June heat. I remember reaching for the hose, then a crushing weight in my chest. Like someone had put a vice around my rib cage and was tightening it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't call for help. I fell into the rosebed, thorns catching my arms. The next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance, sirens wailing, a paramedic holding an oxygen mask to my face. "Stay with us, ma'am," he kept saying. Stay with us. I spent 3 days in the hospital. 3 days hooked up to monitors, IVs in both arms, nurses checking my vitals every hour. The cardiologist said I was lucky. "Another 10 minutes and we might not be having this conversation," he said. Amber visited once. She walked in on the second day, her phone already out, angling for the right shot. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She was wearing the blouse I'd bought her for Christmas. "Smile, Lucille," she said, her voice bright and cheerful for the camera. I was in a hospital gown, my hair unwashed, an IV in my hand. But she took the photo anyway. Click. She leaned in close, her arm around my shoulders, her smile wide. Another click. "Perfect," she said, already typing on her phone. "This is going to get so much engagement." 10 minutes later, she posted it. I saw the notification on my phone. Praying for Grandma Red Heart, the caption read. Family is everything. Please send your thoughts and prayers. The comment section filled with well wishes within minutes. You're such a good daughter-in-law. She's so lucky to have you. Family first always. Nobody knew she'd spent 10 minutes with me and left to get her nails done. I saw the receipt on Instagram later. She'd tagged the salon. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hospital room was too bright, too loud, machines beeping constantly. I picked up my phone and scrolled through Amber's Instagram feed. My hands shook as I went through her stories. There it was, posted 5 hours earlier, while I was still in the ICU. A photo of my living room. My couch, my coffee table, my roses visible through the window. Finally, some peace and quiet hot beverage sparkles, she'd written. No mention of me. No mention of the hospital. Just relief that I was gone. She'd deleted it an hour later, but I'd already taken a screenshot. 40 years in the ER taught me something crucial about documentation. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. In nursing, we documented everything. Every medication, every vital sign, every conversation with family members. Because memories fade, people lie, and the only truth is what's on paper. Or in this case, what's saved in your photos. On an iPhone, you press the side button and volume up at the same time. Simple. That screenshot became evidence later. I saved it in a folder I titled Medical Records. Amber would never think to look there. When the taxi dropped me home 3 days later, my key didn't work. I stood there on my own porch, my legs still weak, my chest tight with something other than heart failure. Fear, confusion, anger starting to build. That's when Amber appeared with her bright smile and her rehearsed excuse. Security, she'd said, like it made perfect sense to lock out the homeowner. I walked past her into my house, each step careful, my hand on the wall for balance. The entryway looked different. Cleaner. Emptier. Mine and David's wedding photo was gone from the wall. The coat rack he'd built was gone. Even the small basket where we kept the mail was missing. Where's my room? I asked, my voice steady despite everything. Amber's smile brightened. Oh, we made some changes. You're gonna love it. The hallway felt longer than I remembered. My legs were weak from 3 days in bed, and each step was an effort. I reached the end of the hall, where my bedroom had been for 35 years. The door was open. I stepped inside and stopped. The walls were painted gray instead of cream. The soft, warm cream that David and I had chosen together, that we'd painted ourselves one weekend in 1990. My bed, the 4-poster oak bed we'd bought when we were newlyweds, was gone. The dresser David had refinished for our 20th anniversary, gone. The nightstands where we'd kept our books, our glasses, our lives, gone. In their place was a desk. A modern white desk with a computer, office supplies, file folders. Amber's planner sat open, her handwriting visible. Where are my things? I said, my voice still steady, so controlled. I'd learned in the ER that staying calm in a crisis was the only way to survive. Oh, in the basement, Amber said, waving her hand like it was nothing. We needed to make some changes while you were gone. Derek and I talked about it, and we really need a home office. You understand, right? You talked about it. With my house. About my bedroom. While I was in the hospital with a failing heart, we're all family here, Lucille, she continued, her voice sweet, reasonable. We're doing this for Harper's future. She needs a stable home, and that means Derek needs a proper workspace. She touched my arm, her hand light and patronizing. You'd want what's best for Harper, wouldn't you? I understood perfectly. I just didn't say it out loud yet. I'll go check the basement, I said. The stairs down to the basement were steep, each step a test of my still recovering body. My legs trembled. My chest felt tight, but this time it wasn't the heart attack. It was rage, building slowly, carefully, like pressure in a sealed container. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement was dark and smelled like mildew and cardboard. I pulled the chain for the overhead light. 6 garbage bags sat in a row against the wall. Black plastic, tied at the top, lined up like trash, waiting for pickup day. My life reduced to garbage bags. I walked over slowly, my hands shaking now. I pulled open the first bag. The plastic crinkled loud in the silence. Inside were my clothes. My blouses, my slacks, my cardigans, all wrinkled and wadded together like rags. The lavender sachets I'd always kept with my clothes were crushed at the bottom, their scent mixing with dust and mildew. I opened the second bag. My books. The nursing textbooks I'd used in school, the novels David and I had read together, the poetry collections I'd bought over the years. Spines bent, pages dog-eared, covers scratched. Treated like garbage. The third bag held my photo albums. Leather covers bent, corners crushed, years of memories crammed in without care. And then the fourth bag. I heard the glass shift before I saw it. A sound like wind chimes, but wrong. Broken. I reached in carefully, my hands trembling. The frame was there, but I felt the sharp edges of broken glass. I lifted it out slowly. It was David's photo, the one I'd kept on my nightstand for the 3 years since he died. The glass had cracked across his face, cutting his smile in half. The photo itself was creased down the middle, bent like it had been folded and shoved in. His eyes were obscured by the crack. His hand, the one that had always held mine, was torn at the edge. She threw away my husband's memory like trash. My chest tightened, and this time it had nothing to do with my heart. This was something deeper. Rage. Cold, clear, crystalline rage. I remembered the day David gave me this photo. It was a week before he died, when he could barely sit up in bed. "So you never forget," he'd whispered, his voice weak from the cancer and the morphine. His hand had shaken as he'd given it to me. "Promise me, Luce, don't let anyone take this house. We worked too hard for it." I'd promised him. I'd held his hand and promised. And now Amber had thrown him away like he was nothing. "This is my house," I whispered to the empty basement. "This is my home." "She has no right." Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, cold break, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. The nurse in me, the one who'd spent 40 years in crisis situations, took over. Assess the situation. Document everything. Plan the response. Act. I didn't confront Amber that night. I didn't scream or cry or demand answers. 40 years as a registered nurse taught me something crucial about crisis management. When a patient codes, you don't panic. You don't run around shouting. You assess, you document, you plan, you execute. So I did what I did best. I started collecting evidence. First, I carefully photographed the garbage bags. All 6 of them, lined up against the basement wall. Then I photographed the contents of each one. My clothes in a heap. My books damaged. My photo albums bent. David's broken photo frame. Each photo was time-stamped, geotagged, saved in multiple places. Then I went upstairs and photographed my former bedroom. The gray walls, the white desk, Amber's planner open on the surface. I zoomed in on her handwriting. Office complete, she'd written. L's room converted. L's room. Like I was an initial, not a person, not the woman who owned this house. That night, I slept in the guest room, a small room at the back of the house, barely bigger than a closet. But I didn't sleep much. I lay in the dark, planning. The next morning, I went to my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She'd lived next door for 20 years, a retired teacher with sharp eyes and a sharper memory. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and coffee when she let me in. Familiar? Safe. Lucille, she said, her voice full of concern. I heard you were in the hospital. Are you all right? I'm recovering, I said, but I need to ask you something. Did you see anything while I was gone? Mrs. Patterson hesitated, her hands wrapping around her coffee mug. She looked uncomfortable. What kind of anything? She asked carefully. Anything unusual. Contractors, trucks, changes to the house. She sighed and set down her mug. Lucille, I've been worried about you. She got up and retrieved her phone from the counter. There were contractors here, she said slowly. They arrived the second day you were in the hospital. A painting crew, I think. They worked for 3 days straight. 3 days. While I was hooked up to monitors, fighting to stay alive. What else? A furniture truck, Mrs. Patterson continued. They hauled out a bed, a dresser, nightstands. I asked Amber about it when I saw her, and she said you'd approved a renovation. I gave no such approval. She said you wanted to downsize your bedroom, make it easier to manage. Mrs. Patterson's frown deepened. I thought it was strange, but I didn't want to interfere. And then I saw her Instagram posts. She pulled up Amber's feed on her phone and handed it to me. There was Amber's carefully curated gallery of perfection. Perfect breakfast in my kitchen, using my grandmother's china. Perfect Harper in my living room, sitting on my couch. Perfect life in my house. And there, 6 posts down, was the one that made my blood run cold. A photo of my bedroom, my former bedroom, now painted gray, now an office. Finally got my house the way I wanted. Sparkles the caption read. Hashtag new beginnings. Hashtag home renovation. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag my house. Not our house. Not helping grandma. MY house. The comments were revealing, like looking through a window into Amber's real intentions. Did you finally kick out the MIL? Someone wrote, followed by a laughing emoji and a champagne glass emoji. She needed to downsize anyway, another person commented. At 72, she should be in assisted living, not taking up a whole house. And Amber's reply, the one that made everything clear. Sometimes you have to make tough choices for your family's future. Harper deserves stability, and that means having space. I can't sacrifice my daughter's needs for someone who's only going to be around a few more years anyway. Only going to be around a few more years. Like I was already dead. Like I was just an inconvenience to be managed until I died. I took screenshots of everything. Every post, every comment, every hashtag, every reply. Mrs. Patterson watched me, her expression sad and angry. I should have called you, she said quietly. I thought something was wrong, but I told myself it wasn't my business. You're helping now, I said, and I need you to do something else for me. I pulled out a notebook I'd brought with me. In nursing, we'd learned to gather witness statements for legal cases, abuse investigations, malpractice suits, anything that might end up in court. Can you write down everything you saw? Dates, times, what the contractors did, what Amber said to you. Mrs. Patterson nodded and took the notebook. For the next 20 minutes, she wrote, When gathering witness testimony, I'd learned that open-ended questions work best. Not, did you see anything suspicious, which leads people to a yes or no answer, but what did you see while I was gone, which lets them tell the story in their own words. People remember details when they're not being led, when they're not trying to fit their memory into someone else's narrative. Mrs. Patterson remembered everything. The contractors arriving at 8 a.m. on the second day of my hospitalization. The painting crew working through the afternoon. The furniture truck that showed up on day 3. 2 men hauling out my bed, my dresser, the nightstands David and I had bought together. Amber directing them, phone in hand, taking photos for her feed. She was laughing, Mrs. Patterson said, still writing. Taking selfies with the workers in the background. She posted one with the caption, "Renovation Day, creating my dream office." She deleted it later, but I saw it. I wrote down the time Mrs. Patterson had seen it, 2:47 p.m., day 3 of my hospitalization. Mrs. Patterson finished writing and signed her name at the bottom, with the date. "Will this help?" she asked. "It will," I said. That evening, I made the call I'd been dreading. I dialed Derek's number, my hand steady but my heart pounding. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Mom," he said, and I could hear the television in the background. Some sitcom, canned laughter. "Did you know about this?" I asked. No preamble, no small talk. "About what?" "About your wife changing the locks and turning my bedroom into an office while I was in the hospital." Silence. The television kept playing in the background, but Derek said nothing. I counted the seconds. 5, 10, 15. "Derek." "Amber just wants what's best for Harper," he finally said, his voice careful. "And what about what's best for me?" Another pause. "Mom, you're not getting any younger. Maybe it's time to think about your options. Amber and I have been talking, and we think you'd be happier in a senior community. They have activities, meals prepared, people to help if you fall." If you fall. Like it was inevitable. Like I was already helpless. "This is my house, Derek." "I know, Mom, but..." "There is no but. This is my house. I paid for it. My name is on the deed." "We're family," Derek said, and his voice had taken on that patient tone that made me feel like a child being scolded. "We're supposed to help each other. Amber's just trying to create a stable home for Harper by kicking me out of mine." I hung up without another word. My own son, the boy I'd raised alone for 3 years when David was deployed, the toddler who'd cried for his father every night, who I'd rocked to sleep at 2 a.m. after working a 12-hour shift at the hospital. The child I'd sacrificed everything for, working double shifts to save for his college fund, eating beans and rice for months so he could go to summer camp, giving up promotions because they'd require more travel time away from him. When he graduated college, he'd hugged me and said, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." Now he was telling me to think about my options. Like I was a problem to be solved. Like I was an obstacle to his perfect family. The betrayal stung more than I'd expected. I sat in the guest room, my room now, apparently, and let myself feel it. The hurt. The anger. The grief of losing my son, not to death, but to something worse. To indifference. The next morning, I made another call. "Gloria Chen's office," the receptionist said. "This is Lucille Brennan. I need to see Gloria. It's urgent." There was a pause then. "Mrs. Brennan? Gloria will want to speak with you. Hold, please." Gloria Chen came on the line 30 seconds later. "Lucille?" Her voice was warm, concerned. "What's wrong?" "I need to see you," I said. "Today, if possible." "It's about my house." "Come in at 2, Gloria said immediately. "I'll clear my schedule." Gloria Chen's office was downtown, in a glass building that reflected the afternoon sun. I'd been here once before, years ago, to update my will after David died. The receptionist recognized me and waved me through immediately. Gloria stood when I entered, coming around her desk to hug me. She was 50 now, her hair showing gray at the temples, but her eyes were the same sharp intelligence I remembered from 20 years ago. "Lucille," she said, gesturing to the leather chairs by the window. "Tell me everything." I sat down and told her the whole story. The heart attack, the hospital stay, coming home to find the locks changed. My bedroom converted to an office, my belongings thrown in garbage bags. David's photo frame broken. Gloria listened without interrupting, her pen moving across a legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me for a long moment. "Let me see your property deed," she said. I pulled the manila envelope from my purse. I'd retrieved it from my safety deposit box that morning, along with 35 years of mortgage payment records. I slid the envelope across her desk. Gloria unfolded the deed slowly, her eyes scanning each line with the precision of someone who'd read thousands of legal documents. She paused at the property description. 1247 Maple Street, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, craftsman style, built 1952. Then her finger moved to the ownership section. She traced the names. Or rather, the name. Singular. Lucille Marie Brennan, she read aloud. Not Lucille and Derek Brennan. Not Lucille Brennan and family. Not Lucille Brennan with right of survivorship. Just my name. Alone. Gloria looked up, and for the first time since I'd arrived, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who'd just found the winning move. "This house is in your name only," she said. "Not joint ownership, not your son's name, not even your late husband's name, which means it never went through probate." She tapped the document. "You have every legal right to evict them." "Even my own son?" The question came out smaller than I'd intended. "Even your own son," Gloria confirmed, her voice gentle but firm. "They're tenants at will, which means they have no lease, no rental agreement, no legal claim to the property. You can ask them to leave with proper notice. In this state, that's 30 days written notice." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, but something close to it. Power, maybe. The knowledge that I wasn't helpless. "How much will this cost?" I asked. I had my nursing pension, Social Security, some savings, but legal fees could drain all of that. Gloria shook her head. "Do you remember 20 years ago when I came into the ER with sepsis?" I did. It was a night shift in February, freezing rain outside. Gloria had been brought in by ambulance, her organs failing, her blood pressure crashing, septic shock from a post-surgical infection that had gone unrecognized. "You were my nurse that night," Gloria continued. 12 hours, you stayed with me. You caught the medication error that would have killed me. You held my hand when I woke up terrified at 3 a.m. I remembered. Gloria had been 30 then, newly married, terrified she was dying. "You told me I'd make it," she said quietly. "You said, you're strong, and I'm not going to let you go. And you didn't." She leaned forward. "This one's personal, Lucille. No charge. We're going to get your house back." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them away. "What do we do first?" Gloria's smile widened. "First, we apply pressure. Who pays the utility bills at that house?" "I do," I said. "I'm the account holder for electric, gas, water, everything." "Perfect," Gloria said, already writing notes. "Then it's time to remind them who owns that house." She looked up. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to send them a formal eviction notice, certified mail, so there's proof of delivery. But before that, I want you to do something for me." She slid a piece of paper across the desk with 3 phone numbers. Electric company. Gas company. Water department. "Call them," Gloria said. "Tell them you're the account holder and you want to discontinue service at that address immediately." "They'll have no power?" I asked. "They'll have no power, no heat, no running water," Gloria confirmed. "It's your account. You have every legal right to close it." I thought about Harper. My granddaughter, only 6 years old, sitting in the dark. Gloria must have seen my hesitation. "Lucille, they changed your locks. They threw your husband's memory in the trash. They're planning to force you into a nursing home so they can take your house. Do you really think they're concerned about your comfort?" She was right. I picked up my phone. The first call was to the electric company. "Customer service, how can I help you?" "This is Lucille Brennan," I said, my voice steady. "Account number 44728831. I'm the account holder for 1247 Maple Street, and I'd like to discontinue service at that address immediately. There was a pause. May I ask why you're closing the account? I'm the homeowner and account holder, I said. I'm exercising my right to control the utilities I pay for. I see. Just to confirm, you want service disconnected today? Today, I confirmed. It will be done within 24 hours, Ms. Brennan. The second call was to the gas company. Same script. Same result. The third call was to the water department. Within 24 hours, the lights would go out. Now Gloria said, we wait. I didn't have to wait long. The next day, I was having tea with Mrs. Patterson when my phone rang. Amber. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Lucille, Amber's voice was high, tight with panic. The power's out. The water doesn't work. Did you forget to pay the bills? I sipped my tea slowly. I didn't forget, I said, my voice calm. I'm the account holder, and I decided to stop paying. Silence. Then, you can't do this. I just did, I replied. We have a child. Harper is scared. She's crying because the lights don't work. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. Amber had made her choices. Now she could live with the consequences. Then I suggest you find somewhere else to stay, I said. You can't just, this is illegal. Check with your lawyer, I said quietly. I'm the homeowner and account holder. I have every legal right to discontinue utilities I pay for. You're a bitter old woman, Amber shouted. There it was. The mask slipping. You're doing this because you're jealous. Jealous that Derek chose me, that Harper loves me more than you. I hung up. Mrs. Patterson looked at me with something like pride. About time, she said. That evening, I returned to my house. Our house, I corrected myself. David's and mine. The windows were dark. No lights, no glow from the television, no warm yellow light from the kitchen. Just darkness. I used my old key, the one that didn't work on the new locks, and let myself in through the back door. Amber had forgotten to change that lock. Inside, the house was cold and silent. No hum of the refrigerator. No whoosh of the heater. Amber and Derek sat in the living room with candles, their faces shadowed. Harper was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face tear-stained. She saw me and her face lit up. Grandma! She started to run to me, but Amber grabbed her arm. Stay here, Harper. I looked at my daughter-in-law in the candlelight. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. How could you do this to us? She said, her voice shaking. How could you throw my husband's photo in the trash? But I didn't say that out loud. You made your choice, I said quietly. Now live with it. I turned and left. 3 days later, a sheriff's deputy arrived at the house to serve the eviction notice. I watched from Mrs. Patterson's window as he knocked on the door. Amber answered, Harper on her hip. The deputy handed her the envelope. Official, legal, undeniable. Amber took it, her hand trembling. I watched her face go white as she read. Notice to quit premises. The document read in bold letters. You are hereby notified to vacate the premises located at 1247 Maple Street within 30 days from the date of this notice. Failure to comply will result in forcible removal by law enforcement in accordance with state law. Amber looked up at the deputy, her mouth open. There must be some mistake, she said. No mistake, ma'am, the deputy replied. You've been served. The next day, Amber showed up at Gloria's office. She'd found a lawyer somewhere, a young man fresh out of law school, probably the cheapest one she could find. He looked nervous when Gloria and I arrived. We sat around the conference table, Amber on one side with her lawyer, Gloria and I on the other. Mrs. Patterson sat beside me as a witness. Gloria laid out the documents like she was playing cards. Property deed, utility bills, mortgage payment records, bank statements. All in my name. all proof that this house was mine and mine alone. "This is the property deed," Gloria said, sliding it across the table to Amber's lawyer. "As you can see, the house at 1247 Maple Street is in Lucille Brennan's name only. Not joint ownership, not a family trust, just hers." Amber's lawyer examined it, his face falling as he read. "But they've lived there for 3 years," he said, his voice lacking conviction. "Doesn't that establish some kind of tenancy rights?" Gloria didn't even blink. "Tenancy rights require a lease agreement or rental contract," she said. "Do you have one?" The lawyer looked at Amber. Amber said nothing. "We were family," Amber finally said, her voice breaking. "Real tears now, or a good performance. I couldn't tell anymore. We didn't need a lease. This is Derek's childhood home. He has a right to be there." "Then you were guests," Gloria replied, her voice cool and professional. "And guests can be asked to leave." Amber turned to me, her eyes wet. "How can you do this to your own granddaughter?" she said. "Harper needs stability. She needs her home. You're going to traumatize her. Harper will always be my granddaughter. But you made your choice when you changed my locks and threw my husband's photo in the trash," I said quietly. "I didn't throw it away," Amber protested, her voice rising. "I moved it to the basement for safekeeping. You're twisting everything." Gloria pulled out her phone and showed Amber's Instagram post. "The one with my bedroom converted to an office. Finally got my house the way I want it," Gloria read aloud, her voice flat. "That doesn't sound like someone who was safekeeping anything. It sounds like someone who thought they'd successfully taken over someone else's home." She swiped to the next screenshot. The comments. "Did you finally kick out the MIL?" Gloria read. And your response, "Sometimes you have to make tough choices for your family's future. I can't sacrifice my daughter's needs for someone who's only going to be around a few more years anyway." Amber's face flushed red. "That was taken out of context." "Was it?" Gloria interrupted. "Because it seems pretty clear. You assumed Mrs. Brennan would die soon, and you wanted her house." Mrs. Patterson spoke up then, her voice steady. "I saw the contractors," she said. "I saw the furniture truck. You told me Lucille had approved the renovation, but she was in the hospital fighting for her life." She pulled out her written statement and slid it across the table. "I documented everything. Dates, times, what was said, what was removed from the house. You lied to me and to everyone else." Amber's lawyer cleared his throat. "My client may have been overzealous in her renovations, but surely this is a family matter that can be resolved without eviction." "Your client changed the locks while the homeowner was hospitalized," Gloria said. "She converted the master bedroom without permission. She posted on social media claiming ownership of a house she doesn't own. This isn't a family squabble. This is attempted theft." Derek, who'd been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, can't we work this out? Harper needs her grandmother. We need you." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 42 years old, but in that moment he looked like a child. A child who'd made the wrong choice and was trying to avoid the consequences. "Harper will know where to find me," I said. "But you chose your wife over your mother. You stood by while she dismantled my home, threw away your father's memory, planned to put me in a nursing home so you could have my house." My voice didn't shake. 40 years of delivering bad news to families had taught me how to stay steady. "That's a choice you'll have to live with." Derek's face crumpled. I didn't know she was going to. "You knew," I said. "You knew she changed the locks. You knew she converted my bedroom. You knew, and you did nothing." Amber's lawyer tried one more time. "Surely there's some compromise we can reach." "There is," Gloria said. "They vacate the premises in 30 days as legally required, or the sheriff removes them by force. That's the compromise." The meeting was over. Amber left in tears, Derek following behind her like a ghost. I sat in Gloria's office for a long time after they'd gone. Did I do the right thing? I asked. Gloria squeezed my hand. You did the only thing you could do, she said. You protected yourself. That's not cruelty. That's survival. The eviction was scheduled for exactly 30 days from the date of service. I marked the days on my calendar, each one a small victory. On day 5, Derek sent me a text. Mom, please, can we talk? I blocked his number. On day 12, Amber sent me an email. You're destroying this family. I hope you can live with yourself. I deleted it without responding. On day 20, I saw them at the grocery store. Amber looked tired, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. No perfect Instagram post that day. She saw me, and her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. On day 29, Derek sent me an email from a new address. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, can we talk? Harper misses you. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I deleted it and blocked the new address. On day 30, I stood on Mrs. Patterson's porch and watched. The sheriff's deputy arrived at 9 a.m. with a moving truck. 2 burly men got out, official and efficient. The deputy knocked on the door. Amber answered, Harper clinging to her leg. Ma'am, you need to vacate the premises now, the deputy said. This is illegal, Amber shouted. You can't just throw us out. The deputy remained calm. You were served 30 days ago. The eviction is legal and will proceed. You can leave voluntarily, or we can remove you. Your choice. Amber's face crumpled. She turned and screamed toward Mrs. Patterson's porch, where she knew I was watching. You're a bitter old woman, she shouted. You're going to die alone in that house. Harper will never forgive you. I said nothing. I just watched. The deputy gave them 2 hours to pack. I watched as Derek and Amber loaded their belongings into the moving truck. Their clothes, Harper's toys, the furniture they'd brought. Amber was crying, making a scene for the neighbors who'd gathered. Several people had come out of their houses, watching. She's kicking out her own family, Amber yelled to them. Her own granddaughter. What kind of grandmother does this? Mrs. Patterson walked over to the gathering crowd. The kind who was locked out of her own house while she was in the hospital, she said loudly. The kind whose bedroom was stolen and whose dead husband's photo was thrown in the trash. The neighbors looked at Amber with different eyes now. No one offered sympathy. No one stepped forward to help. They just watched as the truck was loaded. Derek came over to Mrs. Patterson's porch one last time. His eyes were red, his face pale. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. Please don't do this. Harper needs you. We need you. She'll always know where I am, I said. My voice was steady, but my heart was breaking. Not for Derek. For the son I'd raised, who was gone now. Replaced by this stranger who'd chosen his wife's lies over his mother's truth. But you made your choice, I continued. You chose to stand by while your wife took over my house. You chose to tell me I should think about my options. You chose her over me. I looked him in the eyes. Live with it. They drove away at noon. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. Mrs. Patterson put her hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she said. I know, I replied. But it still hurts. That afternoon, I walked back into my house. The silence was different now. Not empty. Peaceful. The first thing I did was go to the basement and retrieve my belongings from the garbage bags. I carried each bag upstairs, one at a time. My clothes went back in my dresser, freshly washed, lavender sachets restored. My books went back on the shelves, sorted by category the way I liked them. My photo albums returned to their place in the living room cabinet. And David's photo. I took it to a frame shop and had the glass replaced, the photo carefully pressed flat. I hung it back on my nightstand, where it belonged. Over the next 2 weeks, I repainted my bedroom. Cream, like it had always been. Warm and soft and mine. I bought a new bed. Not as nice as the oak 4-poster David and I had shared, but comfortable. My own. I put my dresser back where it belonged. My nightstands. My lamps. Every detail restored. 3 months later, I was sitting in my garden on a Sunday morning, tending to the roses David had planted. The June air was cool and sweet, the roses in full bloom. Red petals like David's love, always renewing. One white bush, our wedding day, still blooming strong. The house behind me was exactly as it should be. Every room restored. Every memory in its place. The silence that had once felt empty now felt like peace. That afternoon, I saw them at the grocery store. Amber was in the parking lot of a small apartment complex on the edge of town. The kind of place with peeling paint and chain-link fences. She was struggling with grocery bags, Harper trailing behind her, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered her Instagram post. MY House. Only going to be around a few more years anyway. The pity evaporated. Our eyes met across the parking lot. Amber's face went through several emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been shame. She opened her mouth to speak. I slid my gaze over her like I was looking at a stranger and kept walking. She didn't exist to me anymore. That night, Derek sent me another email from yet another new address. Mom, I'm sorry, we were wrong. Please, can we talk? I miss you. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it and blocked the address. Some things couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals were too deep. I sat in my garden as the sun set, the roses filling the air with their scent. Mrs. Patterson waved from her yard, and I waved back. Inside, my house was exactly as it should be. Every room a memory I'd chosen to keep. Every corner filled with David's presence and my own strength. I poured myself a cup of tea in the mug David had given me on our 20th anniversary. Pale blue ceramic with simple white letters. Home is where your heart is. I sat in the chair we'd bought together 40 years ago at an estate sale. The same chair where David had read the newspaper every Sunday morning, where he'd fallen asleep with a book on his chest on countless evenings. The evening air was cool and perfect. The roses smelled like home, his home, my home, ours. I was 72 years old, and I'd learned something important. When someone tells you we're doing this for your own good while taking over your home, that's not care. That's control. Property ownership means nothing if you can't prove it. I learned that documenting everything, deeds, bills, screenshots, witness statements, saved me when my own family tried to steal my home. But more than that, I learned that family doesn't give anyone the right to take what's yours. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply enforce what's legally, rightfully yours, without apology, without guilt, without looking back. I took a sip of my tea and looked at the roses. David would have been proud. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Have you experienced something similar? Family members who took advantage, who used the word family as an excuse to take what wasn't theirs. Between forgiving someone who betrayed you and protecting what you've worked for your entire life, which matters more? Let me know in the comments. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about your own boundaries and your own worth, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me keep telling stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.